Cian in studio, hello.
Hello, Joe.
And Rúaidhrí O'Connor somewhere in London at a massive looking room with people who've paid 65 pence sterling for the privilege of being there. Hello.
Hello. No, they're gone. I'm in the Amex room of the O2, which is grander than it sounds. I think all the media is set to take place in this cavernous fulcrum of noise, which I think is going to be. I think you can probably hear podcasts being recorded in different corners of the room. Press conferences start soon. The main auditorium is just around the corner. The fans are filtering out. And it's done.
Is there any great controversy here?
No. Some surprise, some eyebrows raised at the absence of Owen Farrell. There was a big Mando Tuilagi, had a lot of mo going into the room. I think a lot of people over here were thinking suddenly he was going to be in. And really, it's quite a safe squad, really. It's hard to... I don't know, the internet manages to get angry about everything, so I'm sure it'll find a way, but I can't see really any massively controversial calls. I think if you did an AI scrape of all the predicted squads over the last couple of months, this isn't far off what you come out with. I know it's different to the one I had when I picked the squad on Sunday's Indo, which was pre-Northampton Leinster, but he's gone for a slightly smaller, he's gone 38, I think, 21 forwards, a lot of back five forwards, which is understandable given the attrition. Big losers from an Irish perspective: Sam Prendergast, Robbie Henshaw, Caelan Doris. Obviously, after that, Cian reported that he's out of the tour with the shoulder. That's really unfortunate. And a couple of Irish fans came up to me just as I was running down to record this, wondering, was Doris the captain? Because Andy Farrell revealed that he only rang Maro Itoje on Tuesday, and despite bad signal, conveyed the news to him that he is the captain. But I think it's a good choice for Maro Itoje. He will be a good captain for the Lions. He has Lions experience. So I'm struggling. I don't know, maybe Cian has some pitchforks there for me, but I'm struggling to see much to get annoyed about. I think Henshaw's form hasn't been great. I do think it's come too soon for Sam Prendergast, and it's the right decision not to take him. I kind of thought you would take him, but I think it's probably, you've got three more established tens. I'm happy for James Ryan and Gary Ringrose, who weren't selected 4 years ago. I'm happy that Josh van der Fleer has gone in the Lions tour, because I think his career deserves it to be a Lion. Andrew Porter missed out through injury 4 years ago. I hope he makes it, because he would have had a big role to play in that tour. Craig Casey, I thought, had a shot, but he doesn't make the cut. So hard to see much controversy, but maybe I'm missing the lead.
No pitchforks here anyway.
Yeah, I think just as we were chatting coming in, I asked Cian exactly that question. What's our cause du jour here? And we couldn't really think of one. And I was saying to you that I think, in contrast to previous years, that Wales have only produced 2 Lions takes a bit of pressure off the controversy elsewhere. You managed to pick 15 Irish. Of course, we're going to be happy with that. You picked 13 English. Happy with that. Scots get 8. In comparison with recent history, they're happy with that. So Wales are sort of our victims, and they don't really have much of a case given how things have gone of late.
No, and I think Jack Morgan is absolutely definitely worth his place in the squad. He has been Wales' standout player for the last few years, and you can imagine if you plugged him into a good team, how good he would be. Thomas Williams similarly as well. He's been flying it for Gloucester in the Premiership. I do wonder if Craig Casey hadn't missed out on the Six Nations, how close he might have been to making the squad, but probably game time counted against him. You look at his form since he's come back from Munster, has been pretty good. As well, from Scotland point of view, I was probably surprised maybe Scott Cummings, a guy like that, got in, but then again John Deal is the forwards coach, so I think any sort of 50-50 calls, Joe, for likes of a Scott Cummings and maybe even a Mac Hansen as well. Would every other potential head coach have picked Mac Hansen? Maybe not. I don't know if he's been in his best form, particularly since that shoulder injury that he had last year. Look, it's gutting for Robbie Henshaw. I sat down with him a few weeks ago and he made no secret of the fact that this was a massive ambition of his. He's been on the 2 previous tours, but his form hasn't been great either, and if anything, it sort of magnifies what we've been talking about in Irish rugby over the last week, that Jordy Barrett starting on the bench last weekend for Robbie Henshaw, who just hasn't been playing that well. Sione Tuipulotu is obviously out injured at the moment, but he has been phenomenal for Scotland. He's taken over his captaincy. I don't think he can have any complaints about that. Bundyaki has been consistent for Ireland over a number of years. And Rudd is right, I think Gary Ringrose and Hugh Jones getting in there, 2 outstanding 13. So there isn't a whole lot to be I don't think to be getting hot and heavy about here. I think guys like maybe Luke Cowan-Dickey, I was a little surprised that he got in. I was maybe expecting Jamie George for his experience, maybe even to possibly be a midweek captain. Cowan-Dickey, a very good player in his own right, but two Irish hookers, Kelleher and Sheehan. So yeah, I think 15 is about fair. It's a record number, Joe. 14 was a previous record in 2009. You think that Caelan Doris would have been an absolute certainty, as Rudd has sort of mentioned there. I don't know if Andy Farrell has given much of an update yet, but my understanding was that Caelan Doris could be looking at 6 months out here. So it's not good news at all. Interesting. I don't think he's the only Irish player carrying an injury going into this tour. So I think guys are going to be playing through some serious bumps and bruises, and it's going to be interesting to see what the knock-on effect of that is going into next season.
Yeah. It's funny you make that point. 15 is the new record, beating 14 in 09, because I remember 09 with much more excitement, and there was Keith Earls, the bolter, and guys like Quinlan got in, and they would they, won't they? 15, yeah. Look how fattened and spoilt we are, Rudd.
Yeah. And you're instantly looking at the ones who aren't there, but I think they should step back from it. And it's earned over the course of the last couple of seasons, but I think it's the fact that it does feel like the momentum is coming out of it a little bit, and maybe Andy Farrell is partly looking at this tour to reignite some of these players and to re-inject some momentum into the Irish system. And obviously there's going to be a couple of very good players going on that summer tour with Paul O'Connell as well. And, it's hard to argue against. I take Cian's point on Hansen, but you're talking about Hansen or Darcy Graham. Hansen has done more in the game and is such he opens the game up. He's such a good player in the Andy Farrell system, and he's a great character as well. Himself and Cian Tracey, but being Australian born, they have a good appreciation of what's coming.
In some way short of his best, Rudd, though, I would say, since that shoulder injury, I guess is my point.
Yeah, no, I think he was coming into form, but again, he's injured. Like, he's out for 5 weeks now, so there's a risk in that. And Andy Farrell did make the point several times that no one who's disappointed today should count themselves out. Use the example of Alex Corbisiero in 2013. And maybe it's more a reflection of kind of the lack of competition in certain areas that some of these players have got in, because they have lost some form, but yet, James Ryan, we haven't seen him since the Six Nations, so there are players there who've got in despite the fact that they haven't really played much rugby. Scott Cummings missed the Six Nations, Tuipulotu missed the Six Nations. So it's maybe more a reflection that apart from Henry Pollock, Finn Smith, one or two others, there's not a huge surge of momentum from some of these players. And when you step back from it, you think about the Lions' chances of winning this series in Australia. I don't think, Doris's absence makes it a weaker squad. I think it doesn't look as much of a foregone conclusion as it seemed like it was going to be a bit out from us.
Okay, interesting. It's funny with the forwards. I did have a moment halfway through, and several of the players, when they were interviewed on their phones or their laptops after they'd been announced, said that they were frantically just trying to double check the alphabet in their mind at several points. And at one stage in the forwards, I was like, will Van der Fleer be a V or an F? Surely he's a V. Has to be a V. But he was last man in. And Jack Conan, Rudd, were we expecting Conan to get in all along? Like, obviously, he's such a great player. He's been a line before, and a really good line before. But obviously, he's not a starter, which is maybe kind of what some people would assume a line would be. Was it always fairly well signposted that he would get the nod, or less sure?
To be honest, I don't think anything was really signposted, but he's had a good year, and he has he's a 3-test line. He's popular. Andy Farrell rates him very highly. I know he didn't start last weekend, and could be argued that was another mistake from Leinster. But he had a lot of capital coming into this. But it's basically, they've only picked 2 number 8s, himself and Ben Earl, in Doris's absence. So you wonder whether he would have gone with 2 Irish number 8s, or does Jack Morgan maybe get in as a result of Caelan Doris, or who actually. Doris obviously freed up a spot. Does Conan get that like for like, or were they planning on using Earl in a different role? I think Earl deserves to go. Again, we may find out from Andy Farrell. I suspect he'll probably keep a lot of this stuff close to his chest, unfortunately. But,
yeah, because I was wondering, would Jack Willis be thinking, hang on here?
They only picked one player based in France, unless I'm making a mistake, in Blair Kinghorn, and that's a massive opportunity for Hugo Keenan, because he'll go as the only recognised, and Elliot Daly will kind of cover that position, but he'll go as the only recognised fullback for the first couple of weeks, presuming Toulouse go deep into the top 13. So there's an opportunity there for Hugo Keenan to put his name on that, put both hands on that jersey. I think they were obviously concerned that if they go too many players who'll be deep into the top 14 playoffs, they're going to be down bodies at the start of the tour. I was expecting to bring Owen Farrell. When I started hearing the Maro Itoje rumours, I started to believe them and started to see sense in it. Apparently he's been playing very well in France. But
easy knowing you were in London, Rod, for that.
Well, it's like 3 of the nations in this don't pick players who are based overseas, unless Wales have a bit of a caveat on that. I always found it unlikely he was going to bring loads of lads based in the top 14.
Yeah. So there was obviously, of any of the positions, I think, in the build-up, the most talk was around the out-half situation. So it's Russell, it's Smith, and it's Smith. Finn and Marcus go. No place for Prendergast. We will never know, Cian. Or maybe we will. Maybe this autobiography in October will be a tell-all.
I doubt it.
We will never know if Prendergast was there pre-Northampton at the weekend.
Yeah, there's no doubt, I think, that the weekend was very damaging for whatever hope he had. I think it was going to be very difficult to pick Sam Prendergast after the defensive showing that he showed at the weekend. I think the most concerning thing for me is that it seems to be getting worse and it doesn't seem to be getting better. His defence, like, we're still talking about it, and the amount of tackles and the type of tackles that he's missing. So I think it would have been very hard push to bring a 22-year-old who is quite still clearly learning the game. I think, I know there's been calls for him to be given the summer off and hit the gym. I don't see that happening. I think he'll go to Georgia and Portugal with Ireland on that tour, as Rod mentioned, and he'll be asked with Jack Crowley to lead it. So look, I'm sure he'll be disappointed. I think I did still half expect him to be injured, purely because Andy Farrell has been the one that's been pushing Sam Prendergast in terms of trying to fast track his development. Now, when Sam Prendergast was out of the equation, I have to admit I was surprised they went with Marcus Smith. I know he gives you the versatility. I think Finn Smith and Finn Russell were nailed on. But Marcus Smith is in a strange point of his career. Finn Smith, I think, is going to take over now as England's first choice 10 going forward. He's been playing a lot at fullback. I know he's playing 10 for Quins. But I thought, like Rod, I was half expecting him to go with Owen Farrell. And if he didn't go with Owen Farrell, I thought George Ford might have got a look in as the experienced trio of those 10. So, look, obviously that's Finn Russell now, but it's not a position of super strength, I would say. You look back over the last few, or probably over the history really, of the Lions, out half has been such a position of strength, and I don't think you'd say it about these 3 guys.
Yeah, it's not a vintage trio, you'd have to say. Rud, I think Finn Smith is going to obviously have a great career, and Russell has his fans. But I don't know, I would look longingly at George Ford and Owen Farrell as the plane lifted off if I was one of the others.
Yeah. I mean, we may find out if Owen Farrell ruled himself out. That could be a factor in this. He hasn't played a lot of rugby, so I think there's a lot of store being placed in the fact that it's his dad picking the squad, and he knows him very well, and he trusts him. Obviously, so he knows him very well as a player. Obviously, he knows him very well. He raised him, but that he trusts him as a player. George Ford, he didn't play in Six Nations up until the last 20 minutes of that Wales game. So I felt he was coming from a long way back. I know Farrell didn't play in the Six Nations, but there's other factors at play there in terms of his Lions experience. But you're right in terms of it not being a vintage trio. Like, Finn Russell did play very well for the Lions in that third test against South Africa 4 years ago. But we know that Johnny Sexton isn't his biggest fan.
He kicked terribly. Yeah,
he wasn't in great form. Marcus Smith's lost his place. I think Finn Smith's in the pole position to lead it, because I think he's a really good fit for the Irish system, or the kind of Andy Farrell attack. Makes his tackles tough. He's only 23, but he plays older. He's got an old head on young shoulders. He's got a lot of minutes under his belt, in contrast to Prendergast. But I don't think it's one of a couple of positions where you wouldn't be looking at it going, there's massive depth there, or there's it's certainly not Johnny Sexton and Owen Farrell going there in 2017 with Dan Bigger not getting into the 23. Or Johnny Wilkinson, Ron O'Gara, Stephen Jones, for example, a couple of years, maybe a little bit earlier in the piece. So Russell, if he gets his, if he finishes the season strong for Bath and comes into it in great form on the fast track in Australia, could play himself into unbelievable form. But he's got a bit to prove with this coaching ticket, I think, Finn Russell, and that's going to be a fascinating dynamic.
I think if you, to give him a bit of respect, I think if you plug him into a very strong Lions team that's run by Andy Farrell systems, behind what we expect to be a mostly Irish and English pack, I think Finn Russell will look very, very good, as Rudd says, as he did on the previous Lions tour. So I think we obviously judge him through the prism of Scotland, and he's playing behind a pack that get beaten up a lot, particularly when we're watching them against Ireland. So I would still say he is probably still the favourite maybe to start, even though I agree with Rod. I think Finn Smith is outstanding, and if he delivers a Champions Cup on the back of delivering a Premiership for Northampton, then it's going to be really tight. I think Marcus Smith is definitely the third in the queue there.
As to your point on this may be good for Prendergast, increasingly I've come around to that opinion as well. I think there's now an interesting conversation to be had with Farrell as to whether he's jumped the gun here. As you know, there's no doubt Prendergast is going to be a really talented player, but is he fully ready is a legitimate question. Very young man, and the way he's been introduced, so I'm sure Sexton is a huge fan of him, and Farrell, and they're aligned in that. But like, you just think of the last 6 months, there's been such a difference between, say, coming on as a 21-year-old for the last 20, 25 minutes and playing maybe against one of the weaker Six Nations team as a starter. Such a difference in terms of the mood around you, the kind of good on you kid kind of well wishes that be in the stadium. Oh God, didn't Prendergast do well, as a kind of afterthought to the analysis? That's such a different way to be introduced versus he has been plunged from November into why is he starting against Jack Crowley? Look at his defence, nitpicked, as opposed to, a constant understanding. He's a very young player making his way. And I think Farrell and Sexton, maybe I'm putting him wrongly on Sexton's door, but I suspect Farrell consults him. They're very, very tough mentally. Seriously tough. Like forged of steel. They want to be 100% sure that Prendergast can handle all of this right now, because I just think the scrutiny, you take the last few days, it's on you. I mean, his defensive issues are not new. That is on you. That's on Leo Cullen. That's on Farrell. You guys better be 100% in that you're not damaging him. And
some of the spite around him is really sad and pathetic, and I'm talking about online, which I know is like a dark place at the best of times anyway, but I noticed that he got Young Player of the Year for Leinster the other day. I know you were doing the awards, Joe, and I could see in the responses to the Leinster tweet, it was disgusting, really.
Look, I suppose what's on my mind a little about that is it wasn't the mood that a Young Player of the Year vibe should have. Any of it. This should be exciting.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And it was almost like,
yeah,
we're with you. It was like, we're with you, kid. We're going to support you. There's a lot on him, and he's so young, and you can forget it. To your point about the spite, that spite's not there if he's being introduced in a less kind of contentious way, whereas they've really pushed him front and centre. And I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, and he's 22, okay? Like, look at Henry Pollock. He's 20, and he is being fast-tracked like very few players do. Like, he started out this year playing in the under-20 Six Nations, and now there's a good chance he could finish the year by starting in the Lions test team. I think I was saying to you last week that I'd heard, even before he delivered that performance against Leinster, that Andy Farrell is a big fan of this guy. Look, how could you not be? But let's compare Sam Prendergast to Finn Smith. They're both 22. Yeah. They came through with the same under-20s year. Yeah. Finn Smith missed a year of under-20s because he was starting for Worcester when they were still around. He then delivered a 20s Grand Slam for England in 2021. Sam Prendergast did it in 2023. So you look at the two of those guys against each other the other day. The same age, okay, different type of profile in terms of athletically, but Finn Smith's maturity, the way he takes the ball to the line, his tackling, as Rudd says, he looks like he's 2 or 3 further years down the line because he's played a huge amount of top level rugby, not international rugby, but top level club rugby for Worcester, then for Northampton. He's delivered a premiership for Northampton last year before he properly broke into the Six Nations this year. So that's what you're talking about. 2 guys at the same age, and they look like, there's a big difference at the moment, certainly last weekend. So look, the reason that Sam Prendergast is in this position is because Andy Farrell certainly believes that he's going to be Ireland's long-term 10. But what we've seen, we can only judge by what our eyes tell us. And look, Jack Crowley has played well this season, but he's had dips as well. But that summer tour now, which I know is going to be really off-Broadway in Georgia and Portugal, but we're back in the Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley live debate, I think, again going into the summer. So it's very tricky, and I feel sorry for him, I have to admit. He's only done a couple of interviews. He comes across a very nice kid, and I think it's it's really sad the way some people have just kind of ganged up on him. Like online again is what I'm talking about. And I think
But it's gone beyond online now. The fallout from the last few days from very respected pundits, commentators in the mainstream media, it's everywhere, Rod. So that's why I'm just wondering, this fast tracking, you got to be sure you're doing the right thing by him.
Yeah, and like he didn't pick himself, and some of it I think has been over the top. I do agree that his defence wasn't good enough against Northampton, but I watched the game again on the flight over this morning, and I watched it particularly about his attacking involvements, because Ben Youngs, the former England scrum half, did an absolute drive-by on him in that, and there's far more senior players made far more errors in attack than Sam Prendergast. He made a lot of good decisions that were spoiled by kind of people dropping balls or making bad decisions outside him and inside him. It wasn't his best day by any means, but the way he's been, I think, because Andy Farrell has put him on this pedestal by picking him, and then by reporting that or trying to reflect that, there's a perception out there that there's a massive media campaign to get him into the team. It seems to be coming back on him then, in terms of people. There's a backlash towards him, which he has to live with and he has to experience every time. I hope he doesn't put his name into social media too often. At the same time,
I guarantee you a person that age does.
I'm sure he does. Yeah, I'm sure he does. And they're all fully aware of it. Farrell believes in him, but I wonder in the cold light of day, when you reflects on it, whether he believes that he fast-tracked him too quickly, or when he reflects on it, will he think that? I think Crowley was. I disagree with Cian. I don't think Crowley has played well this season. I think he's played well a couple of times, but he was in very bad form coming into November. I think the Ireland coaches have lost a lot of faith in what he can deliver as a starting 10, and they were left looking at other options. And I think they were looking at bringing in Frawley, but Frawley played badly against New Zealand, and they almost rolled the dice. And then Leo Cullen has said, he went with Frawley at the start of the season, but once Sam Prendergast came back as Ireland's starting 10, he felt obliged to pick Sam Prendergast as Leinster's starting 10. And Frawley's lost his form, like the guy who kicked the winning drop goal in Durban last summer. And we've ended up in this scenario where the most talented young Irish player of his generation is in danger of being broken by this exposure that he's been given. So it's not that I'm hearing that he's been in danger of being broken or anything like that. It's just something that you'd worry about him. And I'm sure he's very disappointed today, because he would have believed, I'm sure, at times that this was going his way. But it's about bouncing back. It's a long career. He'll be 26 by the time the next Lions tour comes around. You'd hope that his tackling and his one-on-one defending will have improved immensely by then, or measurably by then. And there's still a chance that one of them gets injured and he's the next in line. We just don't know yet what the hierarchy is. But it was a massive call by Farrell at the time. That's why we talked about it so much. He jettisoned the guy who won him a Six Nations to bring in a rookie who he obviously believed an awful lot into. He built an emerging Ireland tour. He put loads of time into him. But he's a defence coach by nature. He's a rugby league legend, known as, he won the Man of Steel award twice. He's a hard-nosed professional. And the player that he's promoting hasn't been making his tackles. It's just so jarring. Jack Nienaber is picking him or Leinster are picking him in a Jack Nienaber team, and he's getting beaten up in contact. And it's so jarring for everyone to understand and to watch. And it's cost him a place on the lines. And you'd hope it's the making of him, but you hope it's not the breaking of him at the same time.
Yeah.
We should remember as well that Andy Farrell, what did he break through as a 15, 16-year-old? So I'd imagine, if he sees a young player and he believes he's going to be good enough, he's like, well, the old cliche, if you're old enough, you're good enough. Now, I'm not saying that's what he did for Sam Prendergast, but I think Andy Farrell, if he backs young players, so I don't think he would have done it like willy-nilly, even though from the outside looking in at the time, I agree, I know what Rod's saying, but at the time it did look harsh on Jack Crowley, who did deliver at Six Nations in the first year that Johnny Sexton had retired.
Yeah. James Ryan will be very happy, man.
Yeah, I think his stock probably went up, actually, having missed out last weekend. I thought Leinster really missed him. He's vastly underrated, I would say, to people who don't play with him or watch him very closely. He's not an RG Snyman who's going to throw offloads detrimentally. some of the time, Joe, but I think Leinster really missed him at the weekend in terms of the aggression that he brings on both sides of the ball, particularly around the ruck, where Northampton clearly had so much joy at the weekend. But yeah, like, it's a great story for him. I think he would have been one of those guys who was probably on the cut line. I don't think Joe McCarthy's form has been very good, but I think he was always a pretty safe bet to make it in there. But for James Ryan, yeah, you can imagine that, Andy Farrell being there, John Fogarty being there, Simon East being there. If you're a 50-50 call, I think they were probably going to come down on your side. But yeah, it'd be good to see James Ryan back. I think he's due back this weekend.
Okay. Rudd, I know you got to go in a minute or two. I suppose an aspect of today was the political one. I mean, we're going to talk to Stuart Barnes on the show tomorrow. I guess we'll read what the English media make of the selection, 13 English players. It would seem Farrell has sidestepped the distinct possibility that he was going to be accused of a disgusting Irish bias. This is Ireland's pre-World Cup tour. 13 English players should kind of stave off that witch hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Scots will be happy enough with 8. I think once Scott Cummings' name was read out, and he's a good player. He missed the Six Nations. He's probably Scotland's certainly best second row. And but still, once his name was read out, you knew it was going to be a decent day for the Scots. The Welsh less so, but they're less vocal. I wonder how many Welsh media will travel. The Scots didn't travel really when they had so few in it. Jack Morgan, I think, is pretty fortunate to get in. I know he's a brilliant player, but he's probably in the most competitive position of them all. The English contingent is very strong. I think it should be. I think they finished the Six Nations with momentum. They're starting to look again like a really good team. They looked like a really good team when they beat Ireland and Twickenham in the 2024 Six Nations, and then they lost their way after that New Zealand tour and Felix Jones quitting. But like Mitchell Smith looked excellent at the weekend. There's good players across the board there. There's experienced lines. They've got the captain as well. It's the first English captain since Johnson, I think. And Itoje, while I thought he'd go with Doris if he was fit, like Itoje it's his third Lions tour, and his 2017 performance in the victory in Wellington is one of the best, two of the best individual performances I've ever seen. Were Maro Itoje, one in the 2017 second test and one in the 2019 World Cup semi-final. So it was it's pretty a decent day for the English, and it's a sign that I think they're the coming team of the four. Wales are in the doldrums. Scotland are kind of breaking even, but they don't have Gregor Townsend pulling for them in the selection room, so that's a good reflection on where they're at. And when you consider, like, I thought it would be damaging to the Scots that they've lost 11 times in a row to Ireland, so I thought they wouldn't have the respect of Andy Farrell, but they've got a good body of players in there. So we obviously rate some of them as individuals, even if the team haven't made a mark. What did you think of the show, lads?
Well, I was saving the best for last. I think it needs more self-importance.
Well, I was waiting for the darts music to come on when Maro Itoje was walking out with the lion mascot. I'm sure Bill. Yeah, I'm sure Maro Itoje was cringing inside like everyone else watching. It was, obviously you were there, Rod. You can give us your insight, but we're in here in the office watching it. I can tell you, it did not go down well from everyone who was watching.
There's a lot of cynicism in that room.
Yeah, I mean, I
know what that room is like.
Nobody wants to be judged. I'm not here that long. Nobody wants to be judged by that room.
I would say that room reflected a lot of people watching, even your avid rugby fan. Like the Lions goes, like the hype goes into overdrive, and we could see it starting with Ugo Monye on stage as well. But Rod, you can give us what it was like on the ground there.
It was a slow burn. I thought actually that was one of the nicer moments. Not that the cheer in the room and him seeing the fans and high-fiving fans was actually quite nice. I don't think he was cringing inside at all. I think that actually felt like a decent moment in the room. And there was a standing ovation in the theatre. It was the only standing ovation of the day. So he's a quite popular figure. It's obviously a local crowd. But some of the stuff in the build-up, actually John Fogarty kind of saved the day. They tried to do a warm-up for half an hour before the broadcast began. And they started off with an interview with the CEO. After the kind of announcer had told them it felt like a bit of a morgue in here, which was not a good indicator of how things were going. And the CEO's speech didn't exactly get things moving, as he told the people who paid 60 quid to come in that he wanted to build engagement with them.
Well, we really want to know is how's the mural going?
I'd still go, and I'd say that was a strange one. It was overthinking. I think the idea of doing it in front of a crowd has merit, but they tore the whole out of it. Like it's just dragged. And in fairness to Monye, eventually he said, look, let's just get on with this. We can't do this anymore. I know TV people think they have to do it this way, but surely there's a way of even doing the forwards first, having a chat about the forwards, bringing a few of the forwards out on stage, and then doing the backs and tearing it out that way, because it kind of interminable chat beforehand and interviews about nothing where it was hard going in the room. And I can't imagine, apart from wanting to know what the list of names was, like you're really there just for one thing. But the concept, I think, could work if they could tweak it a little bit. But yeah, it was okay. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I was just going to say that. So you have to say the alternative here is you start with a dry press conference and Ian Evans stands up and reads out the names, and that's what we've had. So would you give them credit for trying something new? Absolutely. Like, is it too stiff and corporate and scripted?
Yes.
Obviously. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of,
and the players after.
Well, you see, that was it, and I agree with you. They could have got into that stuff sooner and then get the players up. And we played Mac Hansen at the top, and he brought great levity to it, where he's saying, listen, Bundy was meant to do it, not me. He's mine and the kids. And you can almost hear the relief in the presenters, like, oh God, we can be human beings. Oh, okay. So, it's that kind of an occasion. You always hear Marina Hyde and Richard Osman on their That's Entertainment podcast. They will often say about TV, it never works. Nothing works. And it's because you've too many cooks, you've too many interests. So if anything ever works, it's by complete accident. So nothing works. This was never going to work. But I do give them credit, Rudd, for trying. 65 quid sterling to go in and watch it. That would hurt in retrospect. They just have to try and get everyone a bit more relaxed and a bit more human. Like even Andy Farrell's a little bit nervous when they get him to stiffly stand up and announce the Lions 2025.
It's only when he hears Mac Hansen's name he comes alive.
The first glimpse of humanity was when he was like, oh Mac, thank God, someone I can talk to. Like Sexton spoke on stage, was good. I think you're right, we're just more people, more people involved. Like Ben Earl turned his phone around to show his family celebrating. That kind of stuff that's better than Ian Evans just doing a press conference. But the 45-minute build-up.
You did a squad at the start, and then more player reaction. Yeah. Like I know Leinster weren't keen to have the cameras in. Maybe after.
Hang on, really? Sorry, really? You're kidding? Have you double checked that?
They have a big game against Zebra at the weekend.
But the Irish rugby loves opening the doors.
Yeah, except Mac Hansen standing alone on a beach somewhere in Galway. So yeah, maybe there's be more buy-in in 4 years' time. I think there's obviously an acknowledgement as well that if you get the whole squad in, I know they've 12. They've more. I think the next best. They've 12 Lions, Leinster, and the next best club is 4. So they've had a good day, but obviously there's a couple of people in that room who will be pretty disappointed. Yeah. But
to be fair on Leinster, this week of all weeks, I could understand actually if they'd won on Saturday, it might be slightly different.
But reality TV, you want a few tears. You want to see the disappointment on someone's face. That's part of it. And I know they're only humans and stuff, but you're cruel. You want to lick those tears. Taste the salt.
Like the Hansen stuff. That's the kind of this is fantasy rugby. This is nonsense. When you take a step back, it's like if I was a betting man and Ireland were on a summer tour to Australia, England were on a summer tour to Australia, they'd be the favourites in my book. So it's like, can Ireland, England and Scotland and the best of Wales, can they beat Australia? Like obviously, it's not going to be this like beating New Zealand in 2005 achievement. So that's why you got to lean into the fantasy element, the human element, like the characters. Like if this is the series or the kind of thing that launched Living with Lions and the documentaries, they should really like own that and be like, this is every 4 years. You get Mac Hansen jumping into the sea as he gets the news. Instead of like, I don't know, the mural, whatever the other bullshit was for the first half hour. God, I'd love to have produced it, Rudd. That's all I'm saying. I think we could have cooked something up.
In 4 years, Convention Centre, Joe, I can see it.
Yeah.
Up on stage.
Oh, don't worry. I'll stiff suit. Like, that's the thing. Nothing works. There's no way to you need to give everyone like a few pints. It's the only way to make it work.
There was a few pints, but there was like Lions fans sipping pints at 10 a.m. this morning in the general O2 area. So there was no shortage of pints. Every time they went to a break, there was people getting up and they had to try and rush them back to their seats. So people were there for a good time. But yeah, I think it could deliver a little bit more. Maybe Andy Farrell needed to get the guitar out and give us a blast of Wonderwall or something. It might have just livened things up.
This is what we're talking about. But it's, everyone's
live
nervous.
In Talbot Street in 4 years' time.
Yeah. Well, I guess, look, in 4 years, you'll probably be able to like hologram them live from somewhere. Who knows what the technology will allow. But yeah, look, Rudd, better than a press conference, though, all said, no?
Yeah, no, I think it's good they tried it, but there's definitely finessing that could be done. And now we have to go to a press conference.
Okay, so who's up? Andy Farrell?
Andy Farrell and Itoje. I think Ian Evans is floating around somewhere as well. So obviously Farrell's the man we want to talk to.
How brave do you get in terms of like, Andy, can I just double check? There was no stipulation about Geordie Barrett playing on Saturday. Are you going to go with that first or maybe a one-lines question?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we might have to corner him for a bit of a Leinster debrief at some stage, but Yeah, it's got to. You do get very parochial in these things, so you do let the first kind of 10 questions go about the general tour and stuff before you get into the weeds of.
Andy,
what happened with Stan Prendergast?
Andy,
How did he
about
take it?
the third place finish in the Six Nations. Remember that? You weren't around for that.
Yeah. There's a few little bits, but
It's funny.
I suspect
yeah.
Maro Itoje is going to be the flavour of the month here.
Yeah, I dare. By the way, I know. So you do have to run. He spoke very well, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a great captain. Yeah. Go on, Ruud.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he's a very impressive character, very impressive candidate. Like, he's an inexperienced captain, and we saw on Saturday that Jack Conan's one of the best talkers in the Leinster squad, and he's a great character and a person who impresses me. But when it came to a big decision, they were kind of, he was lost in that moment. So it remains to see what he'd be like in the last 5 minutes of a deciding test when the chips are down. But in terms of like representing the Lions and everything that goes with that, he'll do very, very well at that.
Just on Itoje, like, he only became England captain, as Rudd kind of has touched on, this year, but he's been a guy pretty much through all his career has been tipped as a future England captain, a future Lions captain. And we go back to Sam Prendergast being kind of thrown into the deep end in terms of the captaincy with Maro Itoje. They've actually left him for however many years. Did he break through as an 18-year-old maybe? And now only he's becoming captain, so it just shows the merits of that way as well.
Yeah. Okay, Rory, you got to go. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, man.
Cheers, guys.
Rory O'Connor there of the Irish Independent at the O2 Arena in London, and Cian Tracey with me at
Glamorous
Independent House. I'm sure you both have loads to go and get through, so thanks, fellas. We'll be back tomorrow. Stuart Byron's going to join us tomorrow. We're going to talk to him about the Lion selection, how he sees the tour, and I'm sure he was watching Leinster Northampton as well. So we'll have some more rugby for you tomorrow.